Welcome back to another episode of Brown People Problems, where I, Nikita, your host, take you through what it looks like to navigate life while being brown. And today I have with me Shweta Dixit, who is an old friend from university when we did our undergrad together, and we've just stayed in touch since. But Shweta is now a full-time dance influencer, and before that she was a space engineer. So I'm really excited to have her on today to talk about what it looks like to be a content creator and pursue sort of this non-traditional career as a brown woman. I'm so excited to have you here, Shweta.
Thank you, Nikita. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited, and you're doing wonderful work. As you said, we've been following each other, and I know how important your work is, especially in the brown community. So kudos to you about it.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that really means a lot. I think recently you said, right, that you've made the shift from full-time, from part-time content creation to full-time. How are you feeling about that?
Definitely nervous. Officially, I am a full-time content creator now, starting actually this January. And to be honest, it was something in my mind for a while, especially given that there were some opportunities coming my way in regards to sponsorships and stuff. So I was curious about it, and then my project work officially ended in December. And then I was like, you know what? Why not? Let's try it for a couple months and see where it goes.
Yeah. It sounds like things were falling into place, right, for you, and this just naturally felt like a time to make that transition.
Yeah, definitely. It wasn't sudden. I feel like this was a long time coming. I just didn't want to admit it, to be honest.
Yeah, it can be scary. And I know you are on TikTok, you post dance videos on Instagram, on YouTube as well. And are any plans on creating any different type of content, or are you kind of sticking to the dance?
Dance is it started off as kind of like a way to let off steam especially when I was studying engineering. It was hard, I'm not gonna lie. I studied for 10 years. I did a BSc, and then I did a BEng, so all of that took 10 years, and then dance was just kind of like something off the side. But I realized that I couldn't make money off of it unless I was giving classes. So yeah, and then I had more I guess you could call it hobbies, where I love playing dress up. If you could ask my younger self, she'd laugh at me because I was a complete tomboy. But I love playing dress up. I with makeup. It's my creative expression. So it just flowed into it somehow.
Yeah. No, it sounds really nice, right? I think we all need to have some sort of a creative outlet. And I know you've been dancing since university. We were on the same dance team for our listeners, and I was probably not the most easygoing choreographer, but that was a really stressful time. And I think now I sort of look back and I think, oh my God, I wish I had those stressors again, because the stress now in life as an adult just doesn't compare to how good we had it back then.
Oh my God, we were so stressed about winning a simple little competition now.
Yeah. And I look back at our videos sometimes and I laugh that what we did was not even that complex.
No.
And we were so stressed out about it.
Yeah, but I love that little world was that was it. Now it feels like such a safe space for me.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, and I'm sort of wondering, if you feel comfortable sharing a little bit about your journey from choosing space engineering as a career to now dance. And I imagine there's probably a lot of going back and forth, a lot of anxiety, nervousness, right, that came up around it. And I'm curious what that transition has looked like for you.
Yeah, so what started off like as a kid, I've always been fascinated by space, especially because I grew up in India, and then in the summers you sleep on the terrace and it's just like night sky, and then I would always try to stay awake as much as I could to like look at the stars and try to catch like shooting stars and stuff. So when like my parents decided that we should move here, and then I was looking at college, like university applications. I looked at this program and I was like, this is so interesting, because I was already going to choose engineering as a part of my after my 12th, because I did my board exams in India and then I did university here. So, and then I looked at the curriculum and I was like, this is what I want to do. Like, this is a perfect thing. And I started it, but what ended up happening was the more I learned about space, the more it gave me existential crisis. Like, I can laugh about it now, but it was really scary, because I started feeling like these little things don't care, and then in my like how important relationships are with your parents or with your siblings, and then I started to feel like I just not caring, and which is not really, I feel like it's not really fair to the other person, because here I am just trying to like study the bigger picture, and then everything else feels so small. So it got to a point where I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, but brown parents are like, you know what, finish your degree, you can always decide to do something else later, have a backup, etc., etc. So I finished it. I did like 2, because I really wanted to do it, so I did 2 degrees, and then I think I finished my BEng right when the pandemic hit. So like that's when my graduation was, April 2020, for my BEng. And as I'm pretty sure most, as everybody else, I had a lot of anxiety when it came to like the pandemic, the unknown, what's gonna happen, how's the job market gonna look like, etc., etc. And then Shiva, my husband, he's also an engineer. He's a brilliant engineer, and then he runs his own company. So he's like, hey, we want like, I need help. I need an engineer to help me with projects right now. So do you think you wanna come and help me? It's not space related. And I was like, and then I jumped at the opportunity, because it was not space related, but it was still engineering, something I really like doing, like solving problems and solving scientific problems. So I was like, okay, let's start. And then while I was in university, obviously, I started dancing as an outlet. And then sometimes I'd focus more on the dance and less on studying, because I was trying to battle my anxiety, my existential crisis, and sort of like hiding under my dance. So obviously, pandemic, I danced in my house. I tried to continue doing it, and it just grew during the pandemic. Like, my TikTok sort of started blowing up, and then I was like, okay. Then it started becoming more and more, where I'd get like hate comments, and then I was like, the worst. And then I was like, okay, but I'm just sharing my dance, right? Like, it was supposed to be a passion, and now it's kind of turning into work. And then I struggled with that a little bit. I was like, do I really want to continue? Do I not want to? But I kept gravitating towards recording more videos, because me learning how to record videos and how to edit them, it was such an amazing creative outlet for me. It was so much fun trying to come up with ideas and trying to like, hey, let's try this. Okay, it didn't work. People didn't really like it, or I just didn't get any views. Let me try something else. I was always kept on toes, and then I loved that, compared to like, menial like 9 to 5 engineering work. Is like, you solve problems come the next day, you solve them again. So the transition was gradual. Very gradual. Yeah,
it sounds like all that creative work just felt so like gratifying for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
I
That's
mean,
how I felt in like my work too, as I have like a pretty modest like Instagram, and even just with this type of like video creation, podcast creation, it just feels like there's like, it's like your body taking like a breath. Like it
yeah,
really feels like that. It's so gratifying.
yeah, absolutely. Like I can't agree more.
Yeah, yeah. I know like us as a group, like brown people, like we are pretty creative, but it's just not something that is very rewarded, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, like I think you shared your parents were like, well, just finish your degree and then you can do whatever you want after. Like I have heard that so many times, right? From people in my life as well, that it's just important to get an education first. And obviously we can respect that and understand that. But I don't think we are often afforded the same kind of encouragement and validation for our creative pursuits, right? So it must have been even kind of more challenging, I imagine, for you to say, okay, you know what, I want to do this instead of like engineering.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest, like compared to other people, I had it much easier. But like I don't want to compare struggles because everyone's struggle is different, obviously. So I mean, and I don't blame like older generation brown people because stability is 100% for them, right? Like and then especially coming into a new country, they want to make sure you have a paycheck coming at the end of the month or every 2 weeks, depends on whatever they work at. And creative freedom does not give you that. You don't know if it's going to be steady. So like my dad is an amazing singer. Like he's a classical Indian singer, and he works as like an accountant. Like he has professional designations as an accountant. So I've grown up seeing him lead this dual life. So for me, it's a very easy path to follow, like because I've already seen him do it. But he still continues to teach music while maintaining his full-time job. And I've told him, I was like, hey, why not just, like, you're so good, why not just like teach full time? Because it's not like he's not going to get students, because he's very much in demand. But it's just not something that they want to do, and I respect that. But I'm also very, very fortunate that even though they did tell me to like try to balance it, I told them, that, hey, I want to try this. And then they were very respectful. Like, I think ever since we came here, they've been a little bit more hands-off, kind of like let us as kids do what we want. Because my sister also has her own fashion Instagram and YouTube and everything. And she's the one who actually, in our family, started the whole influencing situation. I just followed after. And now that she's moved to Chicago, like she's gonna have to be a full-time content creator because she doesn't have the appropriate work visas to work on her architecture degree that she again had as a backup. So I think for my parents, it was just, she sort of gave them an idea a while ago, given that after getting married, this is what I'm gonna do to try do it full time. And now that I am gonna try to do it, it's not something shocking out of the box.
Right. She's kind of, usually I think it's the eldest kids who kind of in the situation. It's a bit reverse. It's the youngest one doing things first. But wow, it sounds like a lot of creativity in your family.
We are thankfully very, very blessed. Like my brother's an amazing singer. He just refuses to come online with it.
Yeah, that could be scary. Yeah, but yeah, I think being able to pursue our creative like passions, there's a privilege in that, right? And I think that privilege is something that our parents' generation, and even like a lot of people today, like don't have that. If you're so busy kind of chasing stability, putting food on the table, creating a good environment for your kids financially, you don't have the privilege to be able to stop and say, oh, I'm just gonna, see if I can make rent this month or not, but I'm gonna try it out anyway. That's hard.
Yeah, the only reason that I'm able to even think about this, like, oh, I'll take a couple months, is because like Shiva, my partner, is so good, and he's like, hey, you know what? I'll hold the fort down. Don't worry about it. And his parents have been nothing but supportive. So I, like, as I said, I am like, I have it much easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really important for us to also kind of reflect on our privilege right here, because I am a full-time entrepreneur. I run my own practice, and initially when I made the transition too, I was not sure if the income was going to look consistent month to month, right? It's not a solid same paycheck down to the cent
it's scary.
Yeah, it's very sort of up and down. And in my field, in psychotherapy, we notice these trends where summers are usually much slower for business than the winters, right? So it really kind of made me switch gears and plan financially for what this was going to look like. And I had the privilege of a partner in a stable job to be able to say, hey, I will totally support you with this, and it's okay if things look a little bit up and down for the first couple months. We'll kind of get through it together.
Yeah, no, like support, and like it's a privilege. Like if I was alone, I don't think I would have just taken this approach, to be honest. Because again, at the end of the day, we still have the mentalities as like, where is the next money gonna come from? Like we need that safe, like it's been grilled in us from like since we were kids, right? Like where is that next safety net gonna come from? Like you need to have it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I also wonder what this whole like journey has been like for you from like a cultural perspective, because I imagine there's obviously, who was it that I was reading someone, and I forget his name, and it was a really funny book, and it was sort of this like opening, and he said in his book that, oh yes, it was Jay Shetty. I was reading his book, Think Like a Monk. It's really funny. In the first couple pages of opening, he says, just like every other brown kid, I had 4 career options: doctor, engineer, lawyer, failure. And that really resonated with me, because I think we've kind of grown up with certain professions as being more sort of privileged and more favored than the others. So even just culturally speaking, I wonder if you've noticed any sort of not necessarily sort of shame or embarrassment, but if you've had to do some inner work around embracing this creative passion as a job versus having that like engineer behind your name.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think again, it's not somebody's fault that they're asking questions to me about my work. It's just that I wasn't confident in, like, I just didn't come right out and say it's like, oh, I'm a full-time content creator. I always have to add as like, oh no, but I have like, I have an engineering degree, and then I help Shivam with his like company whenever he needs it and something like that. So it's kind of like I'm just trying to convince myself in a way that, hey, like in order for me to tell somebody and then make them think that I'm not just like dancing and wasting my time at home, that I'm doing more than just dancing.
You have to justify it.
Yeah, because again, as you said, culturally, it's again, I feel like it's just hardwired in me. It's like, unless and until I explain it to other people that, hey, I am not relying on my partner alone, and then I'm not just like floundering around while he's the one hunkering down and bringing in money. I was like, I am trying, I'm helping, this and that. So it's, again, not somebody's fault that it's coming out of me. It's just me, and I had to like work on myself for a couple of months. I feel like I could have been a full-time content creator 6 months ago. It's just, I didn't want to admit it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, obviously we don't want to pass any sort of judgment on some of these cultural learnings that we've had, but I think it's important to still talk about them because they affect us so deeply, right?
Yeah.
And they're so like ingrained in us. I think as you were talking, an example that came to mind for me years and years ago, I think I was in some sort of like a family gathering, and a family friend there who was about my age, he was telling us that he's dating someone, but he was afraid to introduce her to his mom because she just has a BA.
Oh, yeah.
And right, so I think these sorts of learnings and standards for success that we have created like largely in our culture, like they're so insidious because you don't realize how much they're affecting you until you take a moment and you take a step back and you're like, wow, like this is really dominant in my narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it makes you think like, hey, am I not enough,
Yeah, like am I not good enough? And I think even once someone in my like larger family passed judgment on this one married couple because the guy was doing all the work and his wife was just at home, and I really kind of had to say, well, you realize, right, that women don't get credit for all the unpaid labor that they do at home. And if it wasn't for her unpaid labor, with 60 hours a week at home, he would not be able to do his job. There's just so much prejudice that we have against like women staying at home, or just you not being in like these traditional career roles.
No, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like, but on the positive note, I feel like we as a generation, or at least some of us, are trying to break out of it because we are trying to make it seem like, hey, this is, our life. This is what works for us. It might not work for you, but it's perfect for both of us,
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're definitely changing the narrative around that generation and saying, well, we can do things differently, and it's important to do.
It is possible. Yeah,
it is possible. It can be rewarding. It can be financially rewarding, right? All of that is possible because I think entrepreneurship is really like in our blood. If you actually think about it, back in India, like everybody has like some sort of a business. There's so many more business people around the corner everywhere, whether it's a small shop or whether you run your own insurance business, like whatever it is. Entrepreneurship is really embedded in our culture.
Yeah, my dad was a businessman when we were growing up, so like I've seen it. I've seen how it can be rewarding, and then it does sustain an entire family, and pretty successfully too. If it works, it works, and I've also seen him be like, hey, you know what? This is not working anymore. Let me take my family to Canada, and then I'm gonna start working again, right? I have seen that, hey, change is okay. It doesn't matter what age you are. Like, you can decide to do everything from the start.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That really makes me think about cultural resilience, right? The kind of resiliency we've seen our parents demonstrate, because risk-averse people don't pick up everything and put everything in suitcases and take their families and move halfway across the world, right?
No.
It's people who are risk takers, who have the entrepreneurial spirit, which so many of us in our community do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That definitely sounds like you've had some really like lovely role models in your life that are helping you through this.
Yeah, and honestly, like I'm not discounting all the the traditional brown trauma, as I like to call it. I don't know if that is even a word, but like all of that is there, right? But again, there can be positives with the negative. That doesn't mean we ignore the negatives, right? Like I like to acknowledge the positive and yet try to work on the negatives that affected me, so that I can change and be better for myself, not for anybody else.
because that's sort of also my hope, right, with this podcast and these conversations, is that we can talk about what it looks like to navigate different life transitions and milestones while being brown, but not just from a place of like deficiency or inadequacy, but also from a place of like empowerment, because there is such a thing as cultural resiliency. We have learned a lot of some really great stuff from our culture and from our parents that also shapes us into who we are today, and gives us potential for what we can do in the future. So it's important that we also talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because otherwise, how are we gonna learn? And I feel like our generation, especially, like I see a lot on TikTok about millennials versus Gen Z, but I do agree, like millennials are some of the most resilient people because they decided collectively that, like, they're not gonna continue the generational trauma, and then that they want to change.
Yeah, absolutely. That we want to do things differently.
Do
things differently than how they've been done for generations and generations. And it takes a lot of courage.
Yeah, we're like, you know what? No. We literally like stood up and said, no, not anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That we don't need to be trapped in bad jobs that don't serve us, or bad relationships that don't serve us, or family dynamics that are unhealthy, or traditional
generation, like, or traditional gender roles even.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's still sort of like a work in progress for the community, and I think it always going to be a work in progress. I think even within us, sometimes I really kind of notice my own cultural like biases really kind of rise to the surface, and I have to take a moment and go, wait a minute, where is this coming from? So I think we have to kind of just work on dealing with that.
Yeah, like we've just started, and even the what's it called? Just the way how we know that something's wrong is such a big like deal. Like it didn't happen before, right? Now we can correct ourselves. That's also commendable.
Yeah, absolutely. And some of it might be, I imagine, like easier work to do than others. I imagine it's probably feeling at this point a little bit more challenging to maybe go to like a family gathering and introduce yourself as a full-time content creator, right, than it did as saying, yeah, I'm a space engineer. But I think it's a process for all of us.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just trying to convince myself, gather all the good things that are happening, so I can dish them out and be like, hey, no, that's okay, because this happened, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. It's like I'm trying all of these things. It's never like, okay, let me just try it on a slow pace. It's like, no, it's such an unconventional thing that you want to get it done as soon as possible, and you want to be good at it as soon as possible, which is the worst kind of mentality that I've learned that I could have. And I had to like take a step back and be like, hey, you know what, it's okay. Like, if it's gonna take time, whatever time's needed, like I can't rush it.
Yeah, that it's a process. We can't take content creation and that type of entrepreneurship and within like a week turn it into like the same output as we would have in a job.
No.
Because
here we're relying on different algorithms. We're relying that people like us or what we want to show, right? There's so many people that do the same things that I do, right? Like there's like I want to, like, people around me are like, oh no, Shivam's always like, oh, what you do is unique. I was like, is it really? There's so many people that are better than me. Yeah, so it's hard, but it is like I'm trying to navigate it, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're unique in the sense that you're you doing that content, right? So
basically that's the only thing I can rely on, is like I can be true to myself and just put it online, and in the hopes that it resonates with other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And kudos to you. It takes a lot of guts to, I think, be vulnerable online, especially in like the form of like dancing. I don't know, I really enjoy dancing, but I think there's like a huge vulnerability around it to post videos of yourself dancing online, and like you said, for people to pick it apart. And I know you've received a lot of like hate in the past, a lot of body hate in particular.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of courage there.
Yeah, thank you. It does. Again, it's a work in progress. Like I'm constantly, like, you know, learning and learning and trying to make myself better, because it's easy to like say that, oh, like don't worry about it, like, you know, it's just noise, but it does affect you. And then it's, especially when it comes at such a rapid rate, again, like it's great when you're going viral, but the negatives that come with it that's not great. And then it feels like nobody makes you ready for it, because it just comes to you all of a sudden that nobody prepares to be viral, right? Like you think that you're gonna be famous one day, and then you prepare for it, but that's not how it works. Just, I don't know, it just decides to go, like sometimes it just decides, like some people, like, yeah, we like you and we were gonna follow you in a day, right? Like you get like 10,000 followers in a day, and they were like, that's too many eyes.
Yeah. And I think it's sometimes the content that you didn't expect to do well also does well. So you're kind of sitting there scratching your head going, really? This was the one?
Yeah, it's like I took 5 minutes out of my day to make this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think there's definitely, like, you're doing some really lovely work, and you're
Thank you.
really courageous for doing this. It's hard to put yourself out there on YouTube, on TikTok, on Instagram.
Yeah, but I feel like I would have loved to, it's cliche for content creators to say this, but I would have loved to have seen somebody like me talk about the same things that I was going through, you know? Yeah. And it's hard to share, and I'm still like on the fence about what I want to share and what I still want to keep private, because in person I'm a very introverted private person. Like I do not talk about my problems, but here I'm just doing it because I would have wanted something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really gratifying to see inclusivity in like online media, right?
Yeah.
Or just generally out there in the world. It's really kind of affirming to be like, oh, this person looks like me, this person talks like me, and they're doing this and they have these struggles.
Yeah, it is very gratifying. Like sometimes when like, you know, I post things and I get this one message from somebody that's like, hey, I didn't know that something like that would look good on a body like yours, but I have the same body, and then, you know what, like I want to start trying to wear things like that as well. And like I was like, okay, that's worth it, even one message like that.
Yeah, that sounds really rewarding.
Yeah, because like as I was growing up, you know, because brown people in body types, right? Like, oh, wear this, don't wear that. Doesn't matter what you have. It's like they're just gonna be like, oh, maybe you shouldn't wear this. Just try wearing that. Yeah, it's like, you know what? I'm just gonna wear what I want to wear.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I remember when I was a kid or like a preteen, and I was with a friend who was really excited about something, and she was like jumping up and down, and her mom yelled at us. She's like, stop jumping, your boobs are going up and down. And I was like, how is this her fault? She has boobs, like she has a body. I think we've just made women so conscious of their body.
Oh my god, it's crazy, because it's either too many or it's not enough. Like like, what do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
Like I can't change it. This is how I was born.
Right. Exactly. And then we're, instead of, I think, being taught to love ourselves, we're taught to hide all these parts of us and conceal them in some way. And that's why this makes this even more of a courageous and like a rebellious thing, is to go online with it and be like, this is who I am, this is me as is, and, you know, love it or hate it, but I'm gonna show the world who I am.
Yeah, Yeah, that's literally what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like some days I'm very okay about it. Some days I was like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
Oh, yeah. Like you said, it's a process, right?
It's a process.
Yeah, yeah. And so then I wonder, I think all of us, I don't want to make any assumptions about your experience, but I think most of us struggle with like an imposter syndrome, right? We have that little voice in our heads that's like constantly telling us like one thing or the other that's negative about us, and we don't feel confident in ourselves a lot. We feel doubtful of our abilities. And most people who go online with their work in one form or another can feel a bit of an imposter syndrome. And I wonder if you felt that, and more than that, I wonder if imposter syndrome looks a little bit different for you given like your brown identity.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest things I've struggled with is imposter syndrome. As a brown person, you, especially a brown person in dance, because dance is such a vital part in our culture, right? It's embedded in our weddings. It's on our screens. Like Bollywood is such a big thing that when I post dancing, and I didn't get formal education. Like when I was a kid, my mom put me and my sister in like a couple of years of like Bollywood dancing. But again, I didn't have traditional classical training, right? So whenever I'm posting like fusion like dances, right? Because I feel like I can try and do this. I'm always about like, is this technically appropriate? Is this like, am I doing this right? Are my movements right? This and that, right? And the more unqualified I feel, the more I feel like an imposter trying to put things online just because I thought that this dance combination works for a certain song. And it's hard, right? Like you have to be okay with it. Like, and so I feel like I started running away from trying to feel like I'm an imposter by not doing more semi-classical. And then I was like, you know what? I love doing like semi-classical Bollywood fusion because I feel like my body can move that way. So then I was like, you know what? I have to. Then instead of running away from it, being afraid of it, I started writing things down. Why am I afraid, right? Like journaling helped me so much. And then so I started to acknowledge it. I started to embrace it, and the more I embraced it, the more I was able to release it. Kind of like, hey, imposter syndrome is okay, but I can come out of it, because then I have to tell myself, right? Like I have to write it down. Like I am enough. I have the talent. If I am worried about training, I can always go take some classes, right? Like and talent, something can always be honed, right? You're always learning. It's never a full stop. Like my dad, again, I've seen him growing up. He's constantly relearning the basics, and he's collaborating with other peers, and like I see him practicing all the time. So I have examples, but still when you're in that imposter syndrome like bubble, it's horrible. But like good support, and like I had to write so much to get it out of my body, out of my brain, reread it, and then just the thought of feeling guilty of feeling the imposter syndrome would just put me down so much. But I feel like I've come a long way, and this took about a good 3 years to do. And I'm still, again, like, I take time journaling, and it's hard, but it is worth it once you figure out what works for you.
Yeah, no, that's a really sounds like a really beautiful, painful, but also like a really beautiful kind of like journey, right? I think imposter syndrome is tricky as it is, and then when you're doing something that is so different culturally, and when you're one of the first people to do it in your circle, whether it's like a friend circle, family circle, like there's a lot of novelty that's coming with that experience. You may not have as many people to rely on to support you through it, and you almost have like even more to prove because you're doing something so different, and that can really amplify the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, no, because one of the, like, I'll give you an example of one of the easiest way for brown creators to have an imposter syndrome is to or for me at least, is like in terms of workshops, right? Like people ask, hey, are you gonna teach? Because when you create a dance routine, like you're like, oh, I love this one. I wonder if people might want to learn it. You know, because that again, that's a way of income for brown creators that are dancers. But then the imposter syndrome kicks in. It's like, hey, I don't have education, I don't have training. Will I be a good enough teacher? Is this worth people's money and time, right? Are people even gonna come? So all of that it's still a work in progress, because I would love to share the dances I create, but I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, absolutely. That can be a scary place, right? To get to that, you know, is this going to be, like you said, like worth people's money? I think those sorts of thoughts make sense. I was following a brown YouTuber who was thinking about writing a book, and he said, I think something very similar, that, you know, does this feel like it's worth it? But I think, yeah, we all have to do that inner work to get to a place where we can come to and say, yeah, you know what, it is. And once
you believe in yourself, once you believe in yourself, once you believe in your craft and what you do, then things become easier, and then things become, even if they turn like negative, like let's say for example only 2 people show up, then I could turn into like, hey, you know what, like, wow, I can't believe 2 people want to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
you know, someone who sings was once telling me that they were really scared of singing in public, and if they were scared if people would like them or not. And I think I said to them that if there's a market for Himesh Reshamya and Anu Malik, like there is a market for you. And I mean, I love Himesh Reshamya, but you know what I mean, right? Like I think
some of the best songs are by him.
There's like a market for every taste, for every niche, for everyone, for everything, and we're not going to know until we put ourselves out there.
There's 8 billion people in the world.
Exactly. There's a really famous book, I'm forgetting the author's name, but I'll link the book down below. It's called Show Your Work.
Okay.
And it's a very skinny book, and the author just talks about creative work. We can get so evaluative of it, we can get so performative around our work, but the importance of showing your work, even if you feel like it's not good enough, show it, because you know what, it's good enough for someone out there. Right. That's a really lovely read.
I believe in that quote, because again, as an engineer, showing my work gave me part marks to pass.
Yeah, exactly.
In math classes and science classes, like, so definitely, like, I can use that in my creative aspect.
Yeah, that's a really good book. I think you would like it. It's like it's a quick read. But yeah. Well, this was so nice talking to you today, and thank you so much for coming on here and being so like open and vulnerable with me. This was great.
Thank you, like, Nikita. I honestly, some of the things I said, I would, again, 3 years ago, I would have been afraid to say it, even to myself. So thank you for making it so easy for me to make it feel comfortable enough to share.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And you know, you were like one of the first people that came to mind for me as I was like drafting like my episodes and like my guest list. And I was just thinking, I was like, wow, like Shweta would be so cool for this, because what she's doing is so cool. So I'm really glad that you were able to come on here and you took out some time out of your super busy schedule.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. Perfect. Well, for anybody interested, I will leave all of Shweta's socials down in the description box below. Check her out. She's an amazing dancer, and she does really awesome videos. And stay tuned for our disclaimer. The guest and the host at Brown People Problems do not offer individualized therapeutic advice, and our conversations should not be interpreted as such. This podcast is not a replacement for therapy. This podcast exists for educational purposes only. Please consider your circumstances and engage with the content mindfully.